Hello, locals.
Oh.
Okay, we're talking food. We're talking scaling based on your values. Sheena is golden. She is such a champion of the local farmers. She tells the stories of who these people are that are putting food literally in our mouths. Well, not literally. I mean, that would be
She's
really
also
weird.
the founder of Made with Local.
She's founder of Made with Local. My song, Made with Local.
Yes.
That'll be the new song for it, which is in 1,500 different locations across Canada. If you are an entrepreneur, if you don't know that you're an entrepreneur, but you're entrepreneur curious, I guess.
Curious. I like
entrepreneur
that.
curious. If you are, feeling like you have imposter syndrome, this is your episode. If you are a mother, if you are not sure where you're going to go and how you're going to get there.
If you're planning to scale, this is so good. This is such a good episode.
It's high energy. It's like just 100,000 miles a minute. And we got recommended this guest, who is now our good friend from another new good friend of ours, Crystal Richard. Shout out to her. Let's go. Let's talk about scaling up based on values and having a sustainable, successful, food-filled life. Yes. Here we go.
You're listening to Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquel Rudenberg and Christina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning.
I hope you've eaten today, everybody, because we're about to talk about good food made by good people. In specific, one person, Sheena Russell, is the founder of Made with Local, a B Corp Certified, female-led small business that makes the most delicious, simple, nourishing snack bars without the crap in them. Her products are sold in stores across Canada, including Loblaws, Costco, and Well.ca. Made with Local, this is from Crystal Richard, who we all love. Shout out to Crystal Richard. Made with Local started as a small table at a farmer's market selling snack bars. So at the time, I believe this is a true story, Sheena's table was next to a local apiary. What is an apiary? Oh, the bee
farm
that made local.
Honey suppliers.
Yes, honey suppliers. That makes the most incredible honey. She began by bringing home a tub of their honey every few weeks to add as a natural sweetener to her bars. Over time, she went from getting a tub of honey every month to every Saturday as the business grew. Today, Made with Local products are made entirely with products by Canadian farmers and producers, and they are the only notable snack bar company to use honey, and Canadian at that, in their bars. We're going to talk about social enterprise. We're going to talk about so many different things. We're going to talk about your kids. We're going to talk about day drinking. I mean, you've got kombucha and we've got coffee, but caffeinated drinking and naturally brewed drinking. But welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I am so excited to be here, you guys. You have no idea. Thanks so much for having me.
Yay. Okay, so let's get straight into it because we've got so many things to ask and talk about. Tell us what led you to make Made with Local. Like, where did you grow up? Where are you based now? Why did you start making bars in the first place? Like, why local?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of questions right there, but I'll start from the why in the moment. So for me, and my friend Kathy, who I originally co-founded the business with, we were, mid-20s, gym pals, no kids, not a care in the world, all this free time. And we're looking around at that time, this is 2012, and realized that there were not that many delicious, nourishing bars that were available to folks at your local grocery store. And I know this is hard to believe as us now, like almost 10 years later, and you go to the grocery store and there are more bars than you would ever need in your life. But 10 years ago, there wasn't. And we saw this opportunity just to actually make snacks that actually tasted good, because back in the day, like you had Cliff bars, which were like ridiculously expensive at the time, and a bunch of weird protein bars that taste like shit. And we were like, okay, we can do better than this.
Yeah,
we can do better than this. And also, like, we can do this with, a commitment to supporting local farmers and food producers, because around that time, people, especially in the mainstream, were starting to pay a lot more attention to where their food came from. So it was kind of like this come together of lots of different ideas all at once. So that was like the earliest seed of Made with Local.
Okay. I also want to vouch for the fact that like, I feel like the food bar industry is kind of like the airplane industry, where when food started being served on airplanes, everything just tasted like wet dust. And,
Yep.
and with food
100%.
bars, yeah, I was like, this tastes like dust. I don't want to eat dust. I don't want to eat mossy dust, is what the ones that were like, this is really good for you. You now have to suffer through this.
Yes.
And then at the end of it, you're like, well, this tastes like dust and moss. I can't get this flavor out of my mouth. I'm just going to drink some wine and just, flush it all away.
Yeah.
But I also, I want to go back to, okay, so a lot of our audience are like starting their careers. I want to ask you more about when you just walked around and you were like, epiphany, there are not good bars. Like, were you looking for a job? Did you just finish your degree? Like, how did that conversation start? How did that like get deeper with that?
And how did it become,
so
the stall at the farmer's market?
Right.
Yeah. So honestly, I would say as lots of good ideas do come out of boredom, honestly. And again, people were a lot more bored in 2012 than they're allowed to be now, which is like a whole other podcast topic. But my friend and I, like I said, we both had excellent jobs. I graduated from Dal University here in Halifax and went straight into this like very comfortable government position. I was teaching people how to recycle. For the city of Halifax. I was like a waste resource education officer was my actual title. So I was like teaching people how to sort their waste. Yeah.
Waste resource educational officer.
I enjoy how you're just moving right along.
Moving right along. I dumpster dive for a living. And, but it was a really comfortable job because I was working for the municipal government and had all these benefits. And so I'm from PEI originally. I'll note that as well. And like, there is no greater achievement as somebody who is born and raised on PEI than working for the government, because that's like the best job you can get, right?
Right. And PEI is Prince Edward Island. For
Prince Edward Island,
not
yes.
from here.
Yeah. So it's a tiny little island, 130,000 people in the Maritimes in Canada. And so Kathy and I, my co-founder at the time, we were both in these cushy government jobs and we're gym buddies. And just like, again, I kind of joked earlier saying we had all the free time in the world because we felt like we did. And it just kind of came out of this like, hey, you know what would be fun to do? Like I literally look back on the email trails from, that would have been the fall of 2011, years ago. And that's really how it started. It was like emails between us because we were bored at our cushy cubicle jobs and like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to like do something like this? And then the wheels just started turning. Because at the time, actually, another like little interesting in to this thing coming together was I was also like had a little food blog at the time that I was sort of like flexing my food photography muscles. Do you want to know the name of the food blog?
Yes.
Which is like so cringy. It's so cringy now.
I'm going to love it.
This food blog was called Butter versus Burpees.
I'd love
like
to
so
see
cringy.
a little like animated cartoon of that.
If you
I'm like
the croissants.
I do not subscribe to that like at all anymore. I am like butter. I don't do burpees anymore because I would pee my pants. But like I do think that all of these things can coexist. But at the time, again, this is 10 years ago. I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, and I was just like, this is my thing. So it was like healthy food, but like also like really decadent, delicious, treats and things. And maybe that too was like kind of part of me, like getting into this, like just dipping my toes into like what it would look like to like be involved in like the food industry, I guess you could say, or like the building a brand industry in some ways. Those I think were like some of the little pieces that all kind of came together in those early days to kind of get us to the point we were like, yeah, let's fucking do this. And then we started developing recipes, and then one thing led to another, and we started taking them to these little markets. And then, not to say that it just like ran away on us, but that's where it started.
When did you decide this was something you were really going to pursue? What was the transition between like, this is a fun weekend gig on the side of our cushy job to, okay, let's really invest in this and we're going to take it beyond a farmer's market?
Yeah, so that was also like pretty gradual as well. But I can tell you, like very early on in the days of the farmers market, like I totally got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, and it shocked me, right? Because I had not ever thought in a million years of starting a business or being an entrepreneur. Like it was super not on my radar at all. But yeah, I was just like, especially because the hat that I would continue to wear in my business primarily, you know, I've worn them all, but I love sitting in the space of like the brand and the marketing and communications and just like being out in the community and championing like all that Made with Local stands for. And that's something for me that I was super invigorated by in the earliest days. And it is, you know, the farmers market grind can be exhausting because people, but it's also can be incredible because people, right? Mm-hmm. And you're feet across the table from your customers every weekend. And like, they're coming back to you week after week and telling you you're doing a good job and loving what you're doing. And right. And that is very, you know, nourishing, I would say, like to a person as well. So that like built my confidence in those early days that we were onto something really special. And yeah, we were feeling that kind of pull energy in the business from an early stage. So it was when I became pregnant with my daughter, Ruthie, who will be 7 soon, when I had that kind of like shit or get off the pot moment and was like, okay, we're going to either do this or we're not, because one cannot have cushy government job, side hustle that's like blowing up plus new babe. So that was one of those like real turning points for sure. And that was like 2014 ish. So 2 years in was when things started to get real.
All I want to do is like, I just want to see a dramatized version of how you decided to do this, and like have you and your co-founder on like, was it Kathy? You said her name is?
Yeah.
Like you and Kathy just walking along aisles and being like, this one is dust. This one is dust. This one is dust. This one is not dust.
But you know what?
Kind of dusty. You know,
still like that. A lot of granola bars still suck.
Right. But
do you guys want to know why? Do you want to know why they mostly still suck? It's because they're all made in the same way. Is because there are factories that make bars that are pressed, and there's factories that make bars that are extruded. And there's two types of granola bar factories. Extruded? And that's why they all feel the same. Extruded? Literally like squeezed out of a tube. Like think about a tube of toothpaste. When you think about those chalky, dusty bars, the ones that are just like this like indiscernible blob of wet dust, those are extruded out of a tube. And then usually they're enrobed with like a chocolate-esque coating. That's what I'm talking about. So that's why all the bars taste the same, because largely a lot of them are made with the same ingredients and they're made on the same pieces of equipment. So there's not that much variety out there. That's why. So there you go.
That excites me. That excites me because I come from manufacturing world, definitely not in the food industry.
You do?
There's a lot of parallels. Yes. And
okay.
All the things we don't know about each other. I just
every time
so I can pull them out every once in a while.
I did this. I'm like, really? In what time? When? Who are you?
I'm so hidden. I don't talk about a lot of the. Okay. But anyways, hold up. So what I find really interesting about that is the idea of value versus profit. So there's the reason why you have those two main manufacturing facilities or plants and ways of doing things is because it's tried, it's true. You know, they can easily manufacture at the same places. And so therefore it's cheaper.
Right.
Also why you're not going to have a lot of local ingredients. You have local ingredients. You know, you're using different methods. So that brings me to the question of how you made that decision to do values versus just profit. And then additionally, how you're able to continue making the profit you need to grow at the pace that you are, because you're rapidly growing right now, while still maintaining that value aspect. Because I think that's where things get really difficult a lot of times, is you see people transition, start to grow, and they're like, whoa, okay, at this capacity, we have to shift something in order for this to actually still be bringing in the money we need to grow, to expand, to do more. So I guess, first of all, is coming back to that values aspect and how you made that decision that that's so important to you in the brand. And then how you're able to kind of maneuver and market and, work with that in order to keep expanding and growing at the pace you are?
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned earlier how like entrepreneurship was never ever on my radar and just was something that I was really surprised to be like so into in those early days. And I think that that has served as like mostly a blessing, sometimes a curse, but mostly a blessing to me, in that there's been no roadmap in my brain, you know, to be like, well, this is what one does, you know, when one wants to scale, they go to this like list of co-packers, which are like factories that make all different kinds of bars for people that are called using co-packers or co-manufacturers. That just wasn't on my radar at all. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to figure out our own way to do this, right? Because the bars that we make are real food bars. They're soft baked. So they're more baked like a, you know, almost like a tray of giant tray of cookie dough kind of thing, more than, you know, they've never been extruded. They've never been just like a lump of, you know, fruit that's pressed into a pan. That's just not how they've ever been made, because we started making them in our own kitchen. So they're still made like you bake in your own kitchen, just at a greater scale. So in those early days of knowing that we had the opportunity to grow this business and the demand was there, like I just took a very different path in getting to make more food to get out into the world. And it was an unconventional path, but it's one that aligns deeply with my personal values, which is staying in the community, investing in your community, partnering with people that you love and care about. And for us, that was starting our first co-packing relationship, I'm using air quotes right now, with a very unconventional organization that is a social enterprise. They're a bakery that provides work and training programs for folks who have barriers to the mainstream workforce in some way. So it was a totally different way of doing things. Honestly, like the earliest days of us partnering with them to grow and be able to make more product was because I was super duper pregnant and I didn't really have another choice. At the beginning, I was like, I was kind of like, okay, this is awesome. And it felt like a very accessible, like first next step kind of thing, right? Like it's this little bakery. They're women that I know and trust, not some like, you know, big like dude engineer half the country away who's talking in jargon that I don't understand as like a farmer's market entrepreneur. It was women who were like, we've got this team. We're here for you. We're a couple kilometers down the road from most of your ingredient suppliers. Let's start making your food in our little bakery, and away we go. So the earliest days of us having a production partner were out of prego necessity, and then it evolved very quickly into this really beautiful partnership that now has lasted, 7 years, because Ruthie's almost 7 years old, and that's how I always remember how long we've been working with them.
I thought you were about to say, and that's how I always remember how old she is.
Some days it feels like that. I'm like, where am I? Who are you? That's amazing. Yeah. So I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but so this is the earliest days of making these decisions. Didn't really feel like, these big purpose-led, big value decisions. It was like, okay, who are the people in my community that can support the growth of this organization? And then quickly I realized the incredible impact that this model was going to have, which was purchasing local ingredients from farmers and food producers in our area and bringing them to these social enterprise bakeries. The bars coming out of that bakery now have this like very quantifiable, traceable ripple effect out into the community and creating positive opportunities for folks who need it. So that was my kind of aha moment in the earliest days of our first social enterprise partnership. And honestly, I say often too, like, I don't know any other way to run a company. This is the first business I've ever started. And I don't know any other way, right? Like, this is just the way that the business has grown. And I've fucking dug my heels in the ground so many times when some old white dude would be like, well, that's good luck scaling that model. And I'm just like, fuck off. I can do this. We can do this. We have these incredible partners. And it's so satisfying to like have been able to, do what we've done. And it's taken time, right? Like, I'm talking 7 years grind. Like, this is not an overnight success for us. And for folks who are just learning about Made with Local, we might seem like this, fresh new brand on the ground, but we've been trying to figure out how to build this thing in the way that we are committed to doing it for a long time.
Well, it sounds like, you know, what I love about that whole ethos is that you took a concept, you kind of ran with the universe going, okay, there's these people. And then you started with what was near you and what you valued and who you trusted. And then instead of saying, okay, here are these big machines, this is how things are done, this is the process, this is what we do next. Because I'm very academic. I'm like, what do I do next? I'll read about it and I'll look it up. The problem with reading about it and looking it up is that, like you say, it's written by a whole bunch of old white dudes. So the people who are, and no offense to old white dudes, like, you know, and other people.
Or it's just homogeneous. You're just going to do everything that everyone else before you did. So
it's homogenous. Yeah. And you're just basically like, what you did, what I loved that I heard was, we want to do this and we want to do it in this way. Who can we get who will buy in or align with our values? And then how do we figure it out together? So you're like, this is what I want to do. Who can help me do this in a way that isn't compromising those things? And I think with so many of our audience members, you know, we talk so much about, and we get so much feedback about people going, yeah, I just didn't know if I was doing the right thing. And I love
it's so hard.
It's so hard. But the thing is, when you create that foundation of, I know I am being the right way, I think what you also did is you refused to compromise your values by way of creating enough capacity to work it out, both time and resources and people power to figure out, like, and this is what Raquel and I talk about a lot with our podcast and all the initiatives that are going to be coming out. We're like, we need to make sure we create enough space for the boredom, for the big thinking, and to be able to say, what do we believe in? Are we going to try and shortcut this or try and get this, and this in order to get, you know, X, Y, and Z in order to get back to A, or in order to get like bigger level 2.0. And sometimes we have to be like, no, we need to stop. We need to stay where we are. We need to not scale at this point. And we need to like get things really solidified and get our whole team really happy before we move forward.
I think it's also about vibing right too. Like what you're talking about with going to the local bakery and having it be a crew of women that you know, that you've known for a long time, that you feel comfortable with, that have your back. I mean, that's a huge component to it. And that's a huge component to how Bombshell Brunches really grew in the first place as well, was because we were all in very male-dominated industries. And then we started all coming together and actually doing physical brunches. But it was really that backup of women who had similar experiences, kind of lived the same life. We're all hustlers.
We're all local.
We're all local. I've got your back. What are you working on? Cool. You know what? Let's join into this project or whatever. And it helped us all grow in our own individual ways. But that level of kind of being able to work with people that you trust, because what I think a lot of businesses would have done potentially, I mean, like you said, you were pregnant. So you're like, okay, this next step needs to happen. But what a lot of people will do is they'll bring in, let's say, an outside consultant, or someone had recommended XYZ. So they're going to bring on that company. And it's kind of this separate thing. They may not have the same ethos. They may not have the same values. They're going to tell you this is what works and this is what worked for these 6 brands. And so you should probably do the same thing in this same way. And I think having that trust and that relationship with the people that you're working with and taking it to the next level is so important.
Well, it's hard because you don't know what you don't know. So it's so easy to like buy into for me, I buy into the imposter syndrome of, I've got to hire someone who's done these metrics.
Oh my God. Yes, right? Ladies, you're just like hitting on so many things right now. I'm just like, I'm going to flip my table over right now because I'm like every single word. Yes, like 1,000 times over. Yes. Trust is like so important.
So how did you get to that? That's a huge thing, because I want to know how you defeated that imposter syndrome monster when you were like, there must have been times where you're like, maybe I should just get this person, or this person's telling me, or all these people are telling me that it just isn't going to happen. Tell me how you like reached into your pregnant guts and that sounds awful.
Kristina.
I don't know. I
haven't been pregnant for 7 years, by the way. I haven't been pregnant the whole time.
But how you just sat down and went, okay, no boundaries, gonna do this. What was your thought process? What happened?
So I can tell you, I can kind of like define like the one boundary, I guess, which is a good way to put it for me, that boils down to in all of this, because I've been challenged a million times. I've challenged myself a million times. Imposter syndrome is so real, and it is very real in my life every single day and all of that. But the thing for me that it boils down to is that like entrepreneurship, and especially in the industry that I'm in consumer packaged goods, in the energy bar, granola bar category, it is the most competitive category in grocery in North America. If my company didn't, it's because there's just so many players. There's so many brands. Like if you go into the US and go to a Whole Foods and you look at the energy bar category, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of brands, and there's hundreds of others that are trying to get in. It's crazy. It is for sure one of the fastest moving and most competitive categories in grocery. And for that reason, it's excruciatingly hard at times. And for me, without the foundation of my company being rooted in social impact and community connection, I would have fucking quit so long ago. I would have given up, because I am not solely driven by financial stuff, right? By cash money. And I am, of course, my husband works in the company. Our entire family is like fed by Made with Local, like
Ruthie's just having
we're
dinner.
All in.
Ruthie's like, I don't want to.
I don't want another granola bar. But so of course, we're running a company with the full intention of being a big profitable brand, but that comes very much in tandem with this deep commitment to social impact. And without that, I just don't give two fucks. Honestly, I don't know how people do it. I don't know how, and I know that there's tons of brands out there, like the obviously lion's share of people who are running these like CPG startups are doing it just with like the dollar signs in their eyes. And I'm just like, you're nuts, because you have to be so tough and so driven and so committed to that one singular outcome, which is not guaranteed. And anyway, it just blows my mind. So for me, like, that's kind of really what it boils down to, at every step of the way. It's like, we could go to some big plant co-packer somewhere in the States, or we could just source our ingredients from everywhere, but then I just don't fucking care anymore. I just don't. So that's like really kind of like, it's not so much like my strong will. It's more about my need to really care about this company in order to stick with it, because it's so damn hard sometimes.
It's funny. I mean, firstly, I feel like I'm happy that we've graduated from being as like a lot of corporations, and there are more and more non-authoritative kind of people start to rise into leadership positions. We're not as much like a bad 90s movie. Like we're not so much like power driven for this money, get the raise. It's not office space anymore. The Wolf of Wall Street level kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, but I also think that, I often call it's not passion, it's resolution. So if you can have like a good resolution as to why you are doing it, then that creates the foundation. That's the bedrock for your sustainable success. And I say that to a lot of people in whatever career pathways they're in, and especially with creatives, because creatives are inundated with people who will tell you how to monetize in order, and it's a microtransactional economy. So it's like, we'll just, here's how to do this at only $4.99 a month. And here's how to boost this. Here are some ads you can do. And like all these things add up to you just spending all this money to try and buy your success. And there is no roadmap at all. And if you don't have you've tethered your heart to your company, like you've intentionally done that. And I think that, doing that with a combination of understanding what it is that gives you the most joy, like a deep, fulfilling happiness, what brings you enough money to have a foundation and a bedrock for your own like stability, and then what drives you forward every time you wake up. Knowing what that bedrock is so important if you're going to go into any kind of risk-based industry, which I will argue now, especially because of the pandemic, is every industry. Nothing is for sure. Nothing is certain. Like all the gym owners that were like, I'm golden. And then, I know, so there's nothing set in stone. We always perceive this control and we don't have it. So I love that you did that. I love that you've outlined that sustainability piece and establishing it.
And also the idea of giving back and it being bigger than you. I think that's the biggest component of that. So if it's profit driven and all you're thinking about is profit, it doesn't feel bigger than you. It's a personal why, it feels like. Whereas what you're talking about giving back and having, you know, different manufacturing that's helping people and having those ripple effects, all of a sudden this company is so much bigger than you, than just you. You're giving back. And I think
absolutely
one of the things that has always really hit me was I listened to Ed Milet's podcast. I adore him. And he talks to a lot of athletes. And one of his biggest things is he says he refuses to work with an athlete if they don't give back. They have to have a charitable aspect to what they do. And he said the reason why is because the level of depression and issues that they have in their own personal lives is so high. He can't work with them because he's like,
listen,
you have to be able to give back. It becomes bigger.
Absolutely. And so it's so funny you bring that up. I don't know if I've even told you guys this, but my husband, Andrew, who works in the business with me, is actually like a former Olympic athlete. He went to the Beijing Games and paddled for Team Canada as on their canoe kayak team.
Oh, you guys sound like such an underachieving family.
Oh, listen, I mean, I was just like, we met, I was a bartender when we met. I was like pouring him beer when he got back from the Beijing Games. And he was like this like hunky brown, like, you know, tanned athlete. And he's like, hey, and I was like, I don't have time for this. Anyway, long story short, we've been together for like 13 years now, but that is so real. And like there is this like screw loose in people who are these super high level athletes. And because I'm married to one of them, so I see it in that they're always like, he's the hungriest person I've ever met. Like insatiable when it comes to success and achievement. And like, it's wild, honestly. And sometimes I'm like, you need to chill out. Like we're going as fast as we can right now. But of course, like that's also an incredible superpower to have, on the team. And, you know, we're super aligned on everything, but I totally like, that is a very real thing. And it's so true. Like that mechanism of like getting out of your own head as somebody who's hardwired, like a elite athlete is like switching the narrative, I think, on the, you know, this like kind of abundance sort of cycle, right? You have to give, the more you give, the more you receive. And that surely is an antidote to like all the crazy challenging stuff that elite athletes deal with from a mental health perspective. But it's super real.
There's also, it's like chemically like something, there's some, what is it, oxytocin that it creates when you...
dopamine like, or something. One of those happy chemicals in your brain.
One of the happy chemicals. And it's like the more sustainable one. I'm pretty sure it's oxytocin because I think dopamine is the like social media one where you're like little hit of like... but I could be wrong. Look that up.
I have no idea.
I don't know. It's a chemical in our brains. But yeah, I think that servitude, and I think I would argue the only thing I would challenge is that some people love money so much and they build these giant enterprises, and that provides a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of jobs. So there's I also would caveat and say, like, I mean, not caveat, but because I find I'm from a family that is very, very generous, like especially my mother. My mother is like, she will give beyond, you know, and so I just want to, I have to spend a lot of time going, what is my definition of generosity? What is my definition of charity? What is sustainable and what actually feels good, rather than what feeds into my need to please people. And I think if you're, you know, an empath, or if you're someone who is a little bit more kind of emotionally driven, Raquel is very, very good at balancing those things. Whereas for me, I'll give until I feel obligated, and then I'll keep going, and then I'll get resentful. And so I think finding a sustainable model, and sometimes it is okay to be, you know, because I have a lot of conversations with people that are like, you know, you should be giving more and you should be being more charitable. And I'm like, no, because I need to be sustainable.
First of all, who's saying that?
Monsters.
Who's saying that?
Monsters are saying that. Well, you know, when I speak to people,
First of all, no one's going to come out here and tell you how you're going to give back to the world. you're going to get back in your own ways. They can't tell you.
Well, this is interesting though, right? Because a lot in the music industry, you have a lot of people who are like, and I'm using this analogy loosely, but because I don't want to target specific people or specific organizations, but people are like, why can't we have a living wage? People shouldn't be getting paid more than X amount of money. Politicians shouldn't be getting more than X amount of money, which I'm going to be completely honest. I think politicians get paid. I don't agree with a lot of them, most of them, but I do think that people in positions of influence are getting paid because they're in very high risk situations.
And stress, high stress too.
Super high stress. Like I do not want my face to become a raisin because I am fighting for what the people need in their life. I'm sorry, I'm not that generous. I like my face. I like my face. I want to keep my face pretty.
Obama is beautiful, but you saw him age during his time,
right?
Absolutely.
So I think all I'm saying is that there are a lot of people say like, oh, you should be giving more. You should be, people should be really, those people who are in positions of influence and power, they have a responsibility. I'm like, yeah, but you know what it cost me to get here? You know what it cost me to be on that board? Do you know what it cost me to do all these things? So
and
when
also percentage of millions is still a lot more than the person who's giving, whatever they're giving. Like, I don't know what they're giving, but yeah.
So all I'm saying is that I think it's really important and one thing that I think you do really, really beautifully, Sheena, is you have very, very strong sense of who you are and what you can continue to give. And then you're also very good at communicating that to others. So if someone is a creative, an emerging creative, going into an industry, realizing that they want to be an entrepreneur, realizing that they want to add value, finding out what that balance is, that takes time, like you said, right? Like you probably shifted, you probably gave a little bit too much. You probably
Are you balanced, Sheena?
Yeah.
Are you balanced? I don't think so.
I don't feel I oscillate between feeling like yes, this like balanced goddess, and then sometimes I'm like balance is bullshit. It doesn't exist. So and
That's
also
balance.
It's funny that you. Yeah.
It's a balanced
there you go.
approach to
So
balance.
the scales are balanced. It's funny you say that though, Kristina, about like your perception of me being somebody who really knows himself. So I'm a Pisces and I have this like, we're fluid as these like water sign humans. And like I just feel like I feel like I exist very much in the gray. Like I am neither black nor white on any particular, well, that's not true. I have strong views on certain things, but I'm the type of person who feels like I'm very like adaptable and definitely like adapt to certain situations depending on who I'm around and where I am. And that probably has served me well in entrepreneurship because I can be a bit of not in my values from a chameleon perspective, but kind of present myself differently in different scenarios where it needs to be. And I blame that or attribute that to my Piscesism, of course, because that's why, right? Like that's totally why.
Nothing to do with you or your parents or your genetics.
No, it's for sure because my February birthday. But yeah, sorry, I don't remember what the question was on that. But
I don't feel like there was a question. Oh, we were about you knowing yourself. But see, you just articulating all of that is proving my point. You do know yourself. You do know yourself, and you're very self-effacing about it. And what was the word we were saying the other day, Raquel? What was that word we were talking about? Was efficacy, self-efficacy. When you know what
do it.
Yeah, knowing your ability to achieve a thing. Right? Is that what
it's
it is?
Actually, well, it's your perceived abilities. So it's how you think you can achieve something.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So you could be totally capable of doing it, but not perceive that you're capable of doing it.
Right.
But,
right.
So side snack bar, can you tell me before we ask all the questions in the world, I want to know what was the worst flavor combination? Like which one, did you make one where you were like, this is dust, like this is
the worst idea ever. Oh my God. Well, so it's been a long time, but do you notice how I just like took my sunglasses off my head there and I did like shake my hair a little bit because I'm like getting ready for the stories. I'm like, all right, okay, buckle up. So when So our bars thankfully never taste like sawdust because we use a ton of like nut butter and honey, and they've got this like very kind of soft baked, delicious texture. But I will tell you that we attempted a seasonal flavor back in our farmers market days. So this is before we were ever in like a Loblaws or Costco or anything like that. We were just at the farmers market, and we did a seasonal flavor that was actually made with like a sweet potato pumpkin puree as like the wet ingredient. So it was like really cakey and had this like pumpkin pie spice vibe to it. And it was meant to be, you know, like very fall inspired. And it was the first time we'd ever used pureed fruit or like anything that, you know, the dried fruit, the fruit that we use now is always dried blueberries, dried cranberries, whatever. So we made this like pumpkin white chocolate bar, I think. And we had it as part of our like monthly subscription boxes for a bunch of folks who were kind of diehard customers. Anyway, we did not know as non-food scientists at the time that that shit does not last. And a bunch of our like best customers ended up with these bars that were like growing like mounds of green mold, like in the bottom of their like monthly box. And it was like alive by the end of it. So we learned very quickly in that experience that that was bad. Do not do pureed fruit in a packaged food product. So that we learned. I'll also tell you too about another horrible like flavor related incident that we had with our granola bar mix.
Before you do, how did you rectify that situation? Oh,
I mean, we were so small at the time, like we literally knew like the first name of all of our customers. And some of them who messaged back were just like, girls, like this pumpkin bar, good idea, bad execution.
Get it out of my house.
So we were just like, you know, we're very lucky. Like that wasn't like a mass launch, right? Yes. So we, again, you know, relationships and community being something that has been very dear to us since the early days. Like when somebody is so such an advocate and such an evangelist for your brand, like that's something like that can happen. And it's funny instead of being like, you know, something you have to have a recall over. So anyway, we dealt with it. It was all good. But for the granola bar mix one, which was a bigger whoopsie for sure. And we're far enough away from it having happened now that I can like laugh about it. But at the time I was like, oh my God, this is the end. The very first iteration of our granola bar mix, which is a product that you can now find at Costco's in Canada and at Loblaws and Superstore and all these different places. It's an amazing product. It's all over the place now. But it's taken us a long time to get it there. And the very earliest version of this product, we actually called it our real food bar mix because our bars are called real food bars. So we called the baking mix to make those real food bar mix, which for a million different reasons, which is a terrible idea. We've since changed the name on that. But we had a coconut dark chocolate granola bar mix. Yeah. Love coconut. Awesome. Yeah. Beautiful, organic, fair trade coconut, chocolate chips, oats, hemp seeds, all the good stuff. Something happened to that coconut in this product that we launched out into like 100 Sobeys in Atlantic Canada. Oh, no. Something happened to the coconut that I've never heard happen, like has ever happened to coconut in my life. I've never experienced it, but there was some kind of like chemical reaction with the coconut and some of the other ingredients in the bag where the coconut did something called saponification. Essentially, it turned to soap. It turned into
edible
the soapiest. Like it turned, like every little tiny piece of coconut tasted like a bar of soap. It was absolutely horrific. And we immediately had like all of these customers coming to us and being like, I love your food, but like shit went sideways with this coconut bar mix that I bought from you. And it's a disaster. So it was this huge thing where it was out in all these grocery stores and we like just had to figure it out. And it was such an epic fail. It took us a long time to recover from that.
How did you approach it? Like, were you like, I'm going to have to write to those stores and say, can you recall everything? Like,
so as a food brand, of course, like if there's ever like a safety issue, like that's non-negotiable. Like you have to go all in on making sure that your food is not going to hurt anybody. And thankfully we've never really had anything like that. But with this is much more of like a quality, you know, a flavor experience sort of issue. So what we did, this is the craziest thing. Again, we were in Atlantic Canadian Sobeys mostly at the time, which is a grocery chain out here on the east coast of Canada. And we effectively went and bought them all back.
At market price, like.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that must have hurt.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Like, what was the alternative, right?
Of course.
Because there were thousands of units out there. I had my mom in Prince Edward Island out buying them from Sobeys. We had people in New Brunswick. Like we didn't get all of them, but like that was going to be the fastest way to make sure that none of our valued customers went out and spent their, $6.99, which is what it cost. And then was like,
it's mine.
Just FYI.
Yeah, I'm like checking out. I'm checking out of these Sobeys with like carts full of this. And I'm like, oh, you must really like this product. And I'm like, real good.
Oh, it's so great. You should check out the other flavors.
Anyway, it was a complete disaster. And it's something, again, like, so that would have been like 2017 maybe. And we didn't talk about that for a long time. But now again, like, because we've had this like beautiful vindication with the granola bar mix and all the flavors are amazing and they are now widely available and don't taste like soap.
Okay, wait, but how did you, what processes did you put in place after that happened in order to be able to quality check all of your products? Because I'm assuming that's something that happened, obviously it was unbeknownst to you because that just, obviously, but I'm assuming it's something that happened over time because you obviously would have checked it before it was packaged. So
absolutely,
by the time it's out there, it probably happened over the months or whatever. So what processes kind of changed in order for you to catch things like that before it happens?
Yeah. I mean, now we have like a full quality assurance team of people who were trained in food quality assurance, right? We run our facilities, our bakeries, and in addition to being incredible social enterprises, also have a very strong quality control process and lots of different ways, not just from like a flavor perspective, but from safety and all of that. So we're like so much more legit now than we were, almost 5 years ago now. But yeah, it was a hard lesson to learn. It did not feel good. And because, this is the thing too, again, I keep coming back to how competitive our industry is. And we'll all know this as customers, like no matter how much you love a brand and you align with the brand's values, if you try the products once or twice and they're like not really doing it for you, like even though you love the person who runs the brand or the brand itself and everything they stand for, if the food's not good, you're not going to spend your precious dollars on that stuff. And I fully recognize that. And that's something, for us where there's been lots of times where it's like, oh, we realize the product has gone out in the world that has been a bit dry or hasn't been like as absolutely insanely delicious as it absolutely needs to be. That's like one of the things that keeps me up at night the most is like just wanting to somehow control and make sure that every single bar that goes out into the world is like the best bar that every person's ever eaten, which is really hard to do, but it's a goal for us for sure. And yeah, it's tough. I have a mentor who spent a lot of time in the grocery and like CPG industry. And he essentially said, like, if you're not worried, if you don't have like this deep burning fear inside you as a food manufacturer around like things like quality and customer experience, then like you shouldn't be in the business because you should be scared all the time. And I am.
I am so obsessed with your brand and I've been stalking your Instagram and I love the stories that you post of the people that you work with. One of them that I was reading recently, I mean, I love all the bee farming because I definitely want a bee farm. This is something I'm super obsessed about. And I've been like, trying to convince my mom to have a bee farm. So I actually almost signed up for a bee training course on having, beehives.
Yeah, we need beekeepers. We need bees so bad.
Yeah. So my mom has 4 acres in Maple Ridge in BC. So I was like, let's get some bees here. And there's tons of blueberry farms everywhere. The only thing is
amazing.
Pesticides. You have to be a bit careful because it depends, what they're doing with their stuff. Anyways, love bees. So I was super excited about that. But also the salts. I knew nothing about salts and the salt. Can you talk about, I know this is totally off topic, Kristina, this isn't in our, I haven't told her about this at all, but I got so excited reading about the salt that you use. So please tell the story on the company, the salt. Do you call it a salt farm? Is it a salt farm?
I think, maybe it's considered to be a salt farm. So I also, a little sneaky part of I think our customer demographic are I hate the word foodie, but people who really, really care about food and the story behind food and the origin of the ingredients. And I know it's a slim sliver of like the greater population of people who just eat granola bars, but for those of us out there who are like that, our products are for you for sure. The sea, and I'm obsessed with sourcing interesting ingredients, right? Like we don't just have one distributor that sends us all the things in one big pallet. Like that's much to my husband's chagrin, who like runs our supply chain. He's like, can you just stop with all these little tiny farmers you're driving? Like it's so complicated. And I'm like, no, I won't stop. So we source our sea salt, which is in our new peanut butter brownie bar, which just dropped at Loblaws, by the way, and it's delicious. There's a ton of sea salt in it. It's so good. The sea salt and our spices, so our cinnamon, our pumpkin pie spice, our ginger, we source from this incredible family-run business on Cortez Island, actually on the west coast of BC, called Gathering Place Trading, and it's a woman named Lovena Harvey. Her name is literally Lovena, Lovena. Lovena. I'm like, that's the best name ever. And she and her family have this beautiful like trading post kind of business where they source spices and sea salt and teas and things like that from all over the world, but directly with farmers in like the most beautiful, ethical, sustainable way. So the sea salt that they bring to us is actually sourced. This is like kind of mind blowing. And like, I get excited about every time Lovena talks to me about it. It's sourced from this, call it a salt farm, based in a certain region in South Africa, which is where a lot of their relationships are based, that the water that they're harvesting actually comes from like this deep Antarctic aquifer and has been tested to be one of the only sources of microplastic free salt water in the world. So their incredible sea salt is 100% certified microplastic free and is created on this incredible farm. Again, we'll call it that in a certain part of South Africa. And it's just like mind blowing. It's so delicious. And it might seem crazy that like this massive, granola bar company is using that as an ingredient, because usually you think about chefs and like their little tiny, ceramic pinch pot where they have their fancy salts. But no, like we're buying it by like the hundreds of kilograms and just like throwing it in granola bars left, right, and center because it's the best. And also, like how exciting is it for us to be connected to that kind of business and to these kind of initiatives? It's so cool. Yeah. So I can like gush about all of us. It's crazy. And it's like solar, it's filtered through seashells. So it has all these other beautiful minerals in it. It's like a solar powered, so to speak.
I want to go visit this trading post. Let's go. Raquel, we got to go visit this trading post.
I'm going to be in South Africa. For the trading post. Yes. Yeah, we should do that when I get to Canada. And then I also want to go to the sea salt farm because I'm going to be in South Africa in December again. If not November.
Amazing. Well, you know what? You guys would have fun talking to Lovena, because the story, if I can just take one more minute and tell you Lovena's story, which blows my mind. They started their company, The Gathering Place. They were touring South Africa with their 3 kids at the time, I think. And they had this bus, like a VW bus or a camper of some sort. And they ended up, the bus broke down. And they were near a tea farm, and the farmer from the tea farm, I think it was Rooibos Tea, helped them out. And they were like, okay, thank you so much. This is incredible. Like we were just getting ready to head back to Canada. Our bus broke down. So he helped them. I think he fixed the bus or the camper. And since they were leaving, and they spent some time on his farm and saw this beautiful tea that he was producing and like learned more about him and like his life and this gorgeous product that he was bringing out into the world. And we're like, can we have some of this tea? Can we buy some from you? Anyway, long story short, they negotiated that they would trade their bus for a shipping container full of Rooibos tea. And they would have it shipped from South Africa to Cortez Island. And that's how their company started. They traded their camper van in South Africa for a trailer full of tea.
Lovena, can I come visit you? So I'm going to be on Salt Spring.
They're amazing.
I'll be quarantining on Salt Spring, and we can I'll meet you there. We'll hop over. Lovena, we're going to come visit. we'll do a podcast episode with you.
They're so cool. The coolest people. They like homestead and homeschool their children. They just of course, like Salt Spring, right? So it's like, they're like peak Salt Spring vibes, Sunshine Coast kind of energy times 1,000. And so we buy their cinnamon they source in equally sustainable way, ginger, all kinds of spices, and the sea salt, of course. So yeah, I have stories like this about pretty much all of our suppliers. And this is again, like, if I didn't have this, I wouldn't give a shit about this company. Right.
Well,
now
we're just a food podcast. That's all we are now.
Sorry.
That's what we do now.
No, I love it. I love it. This is so exciting to me. That's like my dream come true. I just want to travel the world and bring cool stuff here or whatever. Like, it's just, that's amazing. They traded their bus. They took such a risk. They traded their bus for a whole shipping container of tea. That's incredible. I love every second of that.
I love it. Yeah, I know. That's so great.
I was born on Salt Spring, FYI. So like that just speaks to my soul.
Oh, okay. All right. Look, I'm so hungry right now. Stop it. And now I want tea. Oh.
We want all the things. Wait, okay. How do you do all of this? How do you grow at the rapid pace you're growing at without burning out? I want to know what routines you put in place, because I know I've been an entrepreneur. I mean, Bombshells is obviously entrepreneurial and it's a lot. You have to do a lot. And especially when you start growing, it just starts rolling and growing exponentially and it becomes a lot more work. So how do you do it?
I have burned out.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. Don't make the assumption that I haven't. I totally have. Like, this last year for me has been super, super hard. I had another baby. My 2-year-old was born in April of 2019. And that was crazy because she was born like weeks before we did our national launch with our bars into Loblaws and Sobeys at the same time. So it was an absolute shit show. And that was hard for a million different reasons. Shouldn't say it was a shit show. The launch itself went incredibly. Behind the scenes was chaos, and it was really hard. And that just kind of rolled into the old panorama. And then, now it's just, we're starting to kind of come out of that. So for sure. Yeah, I have experienced burnout. I don't know. I'm not the best person to go to advice for that, because I think that I burn the candle at both ends probably too much. But something that I am doing this summer, which I'm really excited about, is like taking some time to go home to Prince Edward Island. We have a home there, and just like forcing myself to slow down a little bit and just realize that, this is a marathon, not a sprint, that we're on. We have grown like crazy, and we've had these huge launches in this last year, and the company's grown. Like, we're just about to finish our fiscal year, and we're going to be growing about 80% year over year, like despite COVID stuff. So It's been an incredible time, but it's also, been super, super hard. So I feel like I'm definitely right now trying to figure out this combination of things that I need to accomplish, which is like fill the tank, nourish myself, like regroup, but keep up momentum. And I know that you can't have one without the other, or I need to have the full cup in order to keep going. So that's just like, everybody knows how hard it is to like check yourself when you're overworking and feeling stressed out. It's like, okay, no, this rest is like not, you have to rest. You have to rest because otherwise, everything else will suffer. And that's just such a hard thing to do. And I feel like also it's tricky for me too, because I was talking about Andrew, my husband, earlier, who's like this super high performing athlete brained dude. And like, he has different gears than I do. Right. So like he can push it harder. And where you were talking earlier, I think of like, Kristina, when you were saying how you like, there's a boundary there, or there's like a limit you have and you push past it. Like, that's like his DNA. Right. So like, I can try and like emulate that, and I can do that, but like, it doesn't end well.
And it's funny.
Anyway, it's just figuring it out.
Yeah. And it changed. I think I want to say that, like, I love that you said that. I love that, you acknowledge it, the difference. And also, one thing I'm learning is that it changes over time, like different phases. Absolutely. You go into different, and I'm a very like, an undulating person, I guess I would say. So I'll have some really big peaks, but I am, Raquel and I were both athletes. When we were younger. I'm not as much, but I do like the grouse grind, which is this mountain that you climb up if you want to be crazy. Every day.
I've heard about this climb.
It is infamous. It's just, the entire thing is stairs. And this morning, my friend Jeremy and I went up, and he's way faster than me. But the whole time I was like screaming. And there was actually a woman behind me she was like, please go ahead. Or she was in front of me. She was like, please go ahead. And I was like, oh yeah. And she was like, and I started walking and then she said under her breath, she was like, because I can't deal with that noise.
Oh,
wow.
And I turned around and I was like, what? And Jeremy was like, let's keep going. And I got my best time ever today. But my point is, I know, applause. But my point is that I work in that way, and that's very specific to me. But other people are looking at me and going, is that healthy? Like another woman earlier looked at me grunting, and I was like, and she was like, is this healthy for you? And I was like, it is today. And I kept going. I was like, other days that's not, but today it is. And then I was like, why did I waste all of that word breath? But I think the point is it's different for different people. It's and acknowledging how you work and at what point in a project, or at what point, like if you're a deep worker and you're like, okay, we've got this launch or we've got this thing, knowing that ability to kind of check yourself all the time and be like, where am I at? And to be able to communicate it with your team, whether that's your partner or like, you know, your inner team and your outer team, to be able to say that is like, I think that is the key to sustainability.
I think also there's like the energies of multiple people that play on each other. So I know I've had past relationships where I was with someone who is a total hustler and I have a real hustler energy. Like I don't stop, and it just continued. So I would hardly sleep. I was constantly working. And to be honest, at that point in my life, I was a student. I was working as well. So it played well. It kind of worked. I had a lot of energy. I was younger. Now my partner is someone who really values time in nature, like taking a minute, you know, having that cortisol go down. And at this point in my life, that's so important. And that's something that I've been able to kind of play off of and say, okay, I can have that moment. It sounds like you're maybe the one who's like, okay, let's have this cortisol release. Let's just like let it go for a minute so that we can all breathe. Because otherwise I can't operate up here all the time. And there's a point where you can't, and it'll be for him too. It might be at different points for you.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a point for both of you. And we all need someone to say, like, take a minute, like, just take a minute, you know, go away.
And I think, yeah, absolutely. And and a lot of that too, you know, it is the female experience, the mother experience, whatever you want to call it. But like, for me, it was like having a baby right into a pandemic, right into like, it was one thing after a next. And it kind of feels like there hasn't been, I haven't consciously carved out some time to like take a breath and like assess, and not only like recover from some of that, but then also to like recognize the incredible things that we have done in the last year plus. But one thing that I will say, as you were talking there, Raquel, came to mind, something that is an integral part of, I guess we'd call it my self-care practice. That is, I would say, probably one that you don't hear very often or don't think of it in this way. But something that I've had to do to maintain my mental health and to strengthen my mental health is to like keep my blinders up to like all of the other noise, all of the other brands, all of the other CPG businesses that are raising more money, growing faster, more stores, this and that. Like I find that is like one of the number one. If I get tangled up on all that, that is poison, I think, for your brain and for your spirit, honestly. And like comparison is the thief of joy, right? It's so true. And I found that's something like when you're already feeling like worn out from a million other things that are happening in the world, that and seeing and perceiving that other people aren't feeling bogged down like you are or are like immune to what's happening in the world is just like the, you know, salt in the wound. And that's something for me, like there's been brands where I like know the founders, love the brand, love what they're up to. They're absolutely crushing it, but I just like can't follow on social media. I just need to like keep my blinders on and like look at my path, look at my company's path, look at our values, our goals, what our benchmarks are, what our vision for the future is, and just like stop getting distracted or stop comparing to other people's journeys, other people's things. And that's has been that for me is like, that's some self-care right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the quote of the episode. I just want to say that's the quote of the episode, because
comparison is the thief of joy.
That, but also when you're running a business, and especially when you have an element of manufacturing, but even if you don't, what happens is you can't pivot too much because you're now running a ship and not a dinghy. And the more you pivot, the more you're messing yourself up for the future. So to be able to put those blinders on and not say, well, this person came out with cranberry and it did so well, and so now we have to have cranberry because otherwise we're behind. And then you're pivoting, and then your manufacturing is changing, and then it goes on and on and on. That really sets you back. So to be able to put those blinders on and say, this is our values, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it, this is our strategy, and this is what we're running with. You want to be able to pivot if you have to. I mean, we just had a pandemic. There's going to be elements of pivoting, but you can't be constantly pivoting. And I think the way you do that is exactly what you're saying. Put the blinders on, know what you're about, know what your company stands for, and roll forward. Like, just make it happen. The Japanese are amazing at that. Like, if you look at the companies in Japan, they're like, this is what we do. This is how we do it. And 60 years, we're just going to keep doing it, and it's going to make into something amazing.
And they're innovative, but they're deconstructing the, like, you know, what we would potentially consider to be societal norms. Like we constantly, I think, as a Western society, use a lot of metrics in order to, and data to compare. But I think the feminine, or the feminine energy is intuitive, and intuitive is also value-based. And when you have that combination, you've got this really beautiful synergy between the metrics and the inherent, like the instincts. I think that's what makes it, helps you to stay on course. I love the dinghy versus cruise ship analogy.
Yeah, I love that too, Raquel. I've never heard that analogy before, but I dig that.
Yeah.
It is, right? It's so interesting. That's something I've seen so many brands do, especially new brands, that they pivot because they see what someone else is doing. And that's kind of the difficulty when we live in this age of social media, is exactly what you're saying. You see what everyone else is doing. A lot of the best brands that I know of, they mute everybody that they follow except maybe 5 people. So their whole, let's say, Instagram is totally muted except 5 people that they're choosing they want to see. And I think that's really, really helpful, because you can curate what you're watching instead. And I think at different times you might want to watch different things, but I think that is a really good way to do it. And maybe it's not things in your industry because of what you're saying. It's not that you don't like them or you don't want to champion them or celebrate them. You do, but maybe it's distraction. And you just can't
absolutely
have that, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that. That's so amazing. I think that's a perfect way to wrap up our little bite-sized interview.
I don't know.
I'm trying to do all the snack puns, all of them. I'm like, I wish I had written some down before and just like dropped them in for no apparent reason. But thank you. This has been, I wish we could talk for hours. I can't wait to have these bars in my life. I am so happy. Shout out to, it was Costco, Loblaws, and we're also at Well.ca.
So we have our products are in about 1,500 locations across Canada. So our Costco bar mix is in Eastern Canada only, but you can find our smaller granola bar mix and also our bars at retailers all across Canada, like Superstores, Loblaws, Sobeys, Safeway. Many
Can they be
more.
delivered? Does Well.ca,
Absolutely.
like you can order them and get them delivered nationwide? So
and we have a rockin' e-commerce shop. We do free shipping all across Canada from our online shop. So you can check us out at mewithlocal.ca. Yeah, super easy peasy.
Oh, that's so great. Okay. Well, we can't wait to do it. And I want to say once again, to our mermaid from heaven, Crystal Richard, thank you so much for the introduction. If you haven't checked out Crystal Richard's episode, it's absolutely amazing as well. And I'm so grateful for us to have found Crystal. Crystal found us. So I'm really grateful to to her for that because she's introduced us to just the most wonderful friends. And now we get to be friends with someone who makes the best food ever. Oh, I love that. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. This has been way too much fun. And I hope at some point we can clink our mimosa glasses together in real life. I can't wait.
Oh, me either. Okay. Make sure you follow them on Instagram. The Instagram handle is @MadeWithLocal.
You got it.
@MadeWithLocal. Okay. Bye-bye, BBs. Thanks for listening, Bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.